Hello and welcome back to the Pink Floyd album ranking saga. I think this is episode 7 or not. No, 7. We're on album 9, I think. This is another one I'm very excited to talk about, especially because it doesn't seem to be a fan favorite. And that is, of course, The Final Cut. This is one of the most interesting Pink Floyd, I can't take them seriously, Pink Floyd albums. So this was it would have been the 12th studio album, I want to say. Don't quote me on that. I think the 12th. Came out in 1983, so definitely a later one. The first album of the 80s. This is a very interesting album. So, in the past couple albums, we start to see Roger Waters has more control over the writing. The Wall, Animals. You've got more Roger's influence. This album is entirely written by Rogers. Every single song and every single lyric except for one, which we'll talk about, is Roger Waters. So much so that people actually say this is more of a Roger Waters solo album than a Pink Floyd album. And it's interesting because, as you'll notice on the cover, which is a very cool cover, no mention of the name. And on the back, there's some interesting words. It says, The Final Cut, a requiem for the post-war dream by Roger Waters, performed by Pink Floyd, which you can see is listed as David Gilmour, Nick Mason, and Roger Waters. But do you notice something missing there? Read those names again. Something's missing. This is the only Pink Floyd studio album that does not feature Rick Wright. Rick Wright was fired during the Wall recording in '79. He stayed on as a salaried session player, but not in the band, even though he was in the band. It's hard to understand. This album, he's not in Pink Floyd at this point. He's gone. And shortly after this album, Roger's gone. But yeah, this was the last Pink Floyd album that featured Roger Waters, and ironically, it is the most Waters-oriented out of any of them. Of course, after this, Roger leaves, then we have a momentary lapse of reason, which is like, in some ways, is sort of David's final cut. But, here's a good debate. Is this a concept album? Is this not a concept album? This is one of two Pink Floyd albums that we're going to talk about that I think could be a concept album or not. I don't hear a lot of people considering it a concept album, but it kind of has some implementation of a concept album. I mean, the name is The Final Cut, whatever, and then it says A Requiem for the Post-War Dream by Roger Waters. Sounds kind of playwright musical. The track names on it would be The Post-War Dream, Your Possible Pasts, One of the Few, The Hero's Return, The Gunner's Dream, Paranoid Eyes, Side 2, Get Your Filthy Hands Off My Desert, The Fletcher Memorial Home, Southampton Dock, The Final Cut, Not Now John, and Two Suns in the Sunset. So you definitely have some similarities in the titles there. So is this a concept, is it not? I don't know. Leave that up to you. Interestingly, you'll notice here, the words Pink Floyd are pretty much only on here twice. Here, and then down here, where is it? Pink Floyd Management. So, really not a lot of Pink Floyd on here, even though it is a Pink Floyd album. But, if you look in the main, I mean, it really doesn't say much on there. And as you can see here, it also lists all the extra musicians, track listing, produced by Roger Waters, James Guthrie, Michael Kamen, engineered by James Guthrie and Andy Jackson, assistant engineers, sleeve design, Roger Waters, photography, recorded in England, Pink Floyd management, Steve O'Rourke, special thanks to Neil Warren. Also down here, interesting note, you have for Eric Fletcher Waters, 1913 to 1944. That is Roger Waters' dad, which is where you get names like the Fletcher Memorial Home. Also, fun fact, because this is 1983, you have also on cassette listed. So there was a slight alternate track listing. There was a song called When the Tigers Broke Free that was featured on the album, not initially, but later on in later releases they put it in. If you have an original like this, it's not in there. I think it was only on the CD and the cassette. Or maybe it was later in the 2000s when they did the reissue, but originally When the Tigers Broke Free was not on there. So opening it up here, you have some very beautiful imagery. You can see you have all the lyrics for the songs, some wonderful imagery. But yeah, so let's get straight into it, and we will talk about why I have this album placed where it is on the list. So the first track is The Post-War Dream, which is a very soft starting track, lyrics slow, it builds up, and then we have a crescendo all the way up to where it opens up fully, and then it kind of quiets down. It's not a very long track. It's very similar to stuff you would find on The Wall, and that's another interesting thing about this album. A lot of what's on this album, not all of it, but a good amount of it is reworked leftover stuff from The Wall sessions. So it sounds a lot like The Wall. So then you have Your Possible Pasts. This is another one that's quiet, loud, very, again, Wall-esque, very good singing, very good guitar work as well. Really, this is a solid album. We're going to talk about that. But yeah, great song, Your Possible Pasts. One of the Few is next. It's a very short one. In a way, this is kind of like Goodbye Cruel World on The Wall. It's short. It's not a lot of music. It's mostly Rodgers talking. Nothing wrong with it, but, you know, not much to say. Then we go into The Hero's Return. Again, very Wall-esque, sort of that slow... It's really hard to explain, but this album just sounds Watersy. And I don't know how to explain that other than that if you listen to it and you listen to The Wall and you listen to some of his solo stuff, it's just really distinct sounding. And a lot of people, it's what they think of as Pink Floyd. So then we have The Gunner's Dream. For the most part, this is another quiet, sort of talking one. Good song, kind of long, but still good. Paranoid Eyes kicks off... No, it doesn't. I should read that better. Paranoid Eyes is the end of side one. Continues that theme of lots of lyrics, lesser music, very Wall-esque. Like, I keep saying that, but it's good. It really is. Kicking off side two, which in my opinion is the stronger side of the album, we have Get Your Filthy Hands Off My Desert. You pretty much have a tiny little bit of music in a 1-minute segment with Roger talking. And if you read the lyrics for it, it's literally, you know, countries taking other countries. Some of the lyrics in this album are kind of interesting, but yeah, it's a good one. Then we have one of my favorites on the album, The Fletcher Memorial Home. Very beautiful song, amazing guitar work in there by Gilmour. It just sounds beautiful. Actually, you know what? I might stand corrected. I have a feeling that Roger did a lot of the guitar work on this song, or on this album. Probably should confirm that before I make the video. But there's definitely going to be Roger, you know, doing guitar work. But amazing guitar work nonetheless. I think probably Gilmour, but great song, great kickoff to, well, not kickoff to side two, but then we have Southampton Dock, which is another shorter one. Again, quiet, acoustic, you know, slow, you know, beautiful, somber tone. The final cut, the title track, immediately follows that up. Also one with great guitar work, great lyrics, great rhythm. It's, again, a beautiful way to, you start to finish out the album. It's wonderful sounding. Then you have Not Now, John, which was the one single off of this album. And ironically, out of every song on this album, it sounds the least like any of the others. I mean, but it is great. You know, it was released as a single, F-bombs and all. Wonderful song. And, funny enough, it is the only song on the album where David Gilmour actually sings. And it is most of the song. And it is just beautiful sounding. I love that song. Great guitar work. I definitely can hear the Wall influence in here. It is just, oh, it is just a good song. I would actually argue that Not Now John is one of Pink Floyd's best songs. I think if I made a greatest hits album record, I don't know how many songs on Final Cut would be in there, but this one definitely would. And you know what other one definitely would? Is Two Suns in the Sunset, which is the last track on the album, and what a beautiful closer it is. Between the singing, the guitar, the keyboards, the saxophone, it is just gorgeous, and it ends the album so well. This is definitely an album where I don't ever get bored listening to it. I'll put it on, I'll be like, ooh, what's next, what's next? I'll be like, oh, I can't wait, it's coming. And that is where this album shines. The reason why this album is high up for me is because Roger Waters has a very distinct writing style. We all know that. And I think that because this is basically just his writing, you get the strongest... Now, granted, there's a Roger versus David debate, who's better, blah, 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 whatever. I'm not going to talk about my personal preferences because I have my opinions, but credit where credit is due to Waters. This is a masterpiece. And I think that even though you don't have Rick Wright, and even though you don't have the influence from the others, whether you like it or not, Roger Waters is an amazing songwriter, and it comes to life in a culmination with Pink Floyd right here. And that is why I have this album where it is. Would I listen to it over more? Yeah. Would I listen to it over, you know, Wish You Were Here, Metal, The Wall, albums that are obviously coming up on the list? No. But is it good? Yeah. Is it worth the BS that people feed this album? No. It's wonderful. It sounds phenomenal. It is great sounding. It is just beautiful. And that's, I think, the best thing about this album. It is whether you like... Now, if you hate Waters' writing and you're, you know, you won't listen to Pink Floyd between, you know, Saucerful and, like, this, and you'll only listen to the early stuff or the really, really, like, Division Bell stuff, this isn't your album. This is not your album. You're not going to like it. It is very Wall sounding, very Roger sounding, which admittedly, The Wall sounds the way it does because Roger did a lot of the writing. All of it? No. David did a lot of the writing on that album as well. Well, some. But then again, The Wall was kind of Roger's baby. He came up with that concept. Which is kind of funny because Dark Side is a little more 50-50-ish. Yeah, so Dark Side is definitely more 50-50. You have a lot more of Dave singing. I mean, Roger doesn't really sing much on that album. He does a little in the end, but David really does the singing. Rick Wright does a lot of the writing. Mason does a little bit of the writing. It's a more even spread out album, especially between just Rogers and Gilmore alone. This is all Rogers completely. The Wall is, you know, 75% to 80% Rogers. This is 99, and it would be 100 if it wasn't for the fact that it's still Dave and Nick, and Dave sings a little on, you know, Not No John. So, still a wonderful album. I don't regret putting this above Dark Side. I would listen to this above Dark Side. I think it sounds beautiful, and I think that if I'm really looking for the Roger sound, and I just, you know, I'm sitting there and I'm like, yeah, I just want to hear Roger. I love Dark Side. I love The Wall. I love Wish You Were Here. I love, you know, Saucerful more. But I want to hear just Roger singing from the heart. Boom. Here's your album. So I think that that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Pink Floyd album ranking. We have a very interesting one indeed. I think that the most commonly bottom of the list albums for people are this, The Endless River, and More. I think More is often the bottom, then this, then Endless River. But I think it's great. I think it's a wonderful album. I think people give it way more crap than it deserves. And yeah, it is a lot of Roger, and maybe if you don't like him, great. But, I mean, look at the songs objectively. Unless you like pounding heavy music all the time, you know, the Nile song, then I guess I could get it because this is really soft and quiet like The Wall, just without the concept. I mean, again, debate on it below. Is this a concept album? Nah, it's kind of. I mean, the title and the description, yeah, the songs kind of... I don't know, though. I mean, the songs don't flow into one another. That, to me, is what makes a concept album kind of a concept album. So yeah, not quite a concept-ish. One thing I will mention, though I forgot to mention, this actually began life and was supposed to begin life as a soundtrack to The Wall, believe it or not, in 1982. It didn't because the war broke out and it, you know, it was changed, but the infancy of it was slightly soundtracky. So that's going to be it. Thank you all for watching this one. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Hope you've enjoyed the final cut. Let me know what your thoughts are. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.